Rosemary, Diana, Chris. Hello, everybody. People are arriving. Hi, Chris.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Hi, Di.
Hi, Mike.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hi, Deborah. Scott.
Hi.
Marcia's here. So here we are, our resolution roundtable. It's the second one of these we're doing. The first one seemed to go down very well, so we thought we'd do it again. And just a reminder for what this is. I'm just noticing who's arriving. Lots of people arriving all of a sudden at 12:01. So it's an interactive event. So if you would be so kind as to put your cameras on, it's up to you, but nice if we can see you and interact with you. The idea here is for in effect a case supervision session and a sort of an ideas exchange around specifically around mediation cases. So as you know, those of you who are familiar with our work, we do mostly interpersonal mediation, and we apply an interpersonal model to all of the disputes that we do. So we will work with commercial disputes, workplace, neighborhood, families who are trying to stay together, and any kind of disputes where people are trying to repair or improve a relationship. So we don't do evaluative mediation. We don't do families in the sense of divorce and separation. And we don't really go into send mediation. I know some of you guys who are on today do send. So really interpersonal mediation, a lot of it's workplace, some of it's neighborhoods, some of it is families staying together, and some of it is just people falling out who need to mend a relationship. So our model is very much down the transformative end of the mediation spectrum. So that's just to sort of set the context for today. So nothing evaluative, none of this quotes civil mediation stuff. That's not our bag at all. And arguably it's not mediation anyway. So what we like to do on this is to hear from you. So I'll shut up in a minute, and it'd be great to hear from anybody who wants to contribute in terms of saying, right, I'm working on this case, or I've just done this case, or I had this case, or I've been offered this case. Very, very important to preserve confidentiality, especially in this fairly public forum. So no names, no employers' names, no town where they work, no identifying details. Okay, I worked with a couple of people and this is what happened. You may mention that maybe one was a male or female, one was older or younger. I mean, that might be significant in relation to the dispute and what's going on in the dispute, but please keep it so that we can't possibly imagine if those people were watching today, they couldn't possibly identify themselves by what you say about them. So nothing at all about names, places, dates, employers, anything like that. Okay. Apart from that, as we did before, it'd be great to hear from you a few minutes around your case, and maybe if you've got a question. So that's the most helpful thing in terms of the learning that people can take away from this forum, is if you have a particular question, like what would you do, or what should I have done, or did I do the right thing, or what was going on? These are the interesting and the questions that will give rise to more learning for this kind of a forum. So we're here to swap ideas. We're here to help people stay on the tracks in terms of doing mediation and not something else. So I'll throw it open really. In terms of anybody who would like to chip in, use the reactions if you can. Put your hand up on the reactions button down the bottom of your Zoom, so we know that it's you that wants to speak. My colleague's got the has got the buttons, and we'll sort of put you on. You're all muted at the moment, just to cut out the background noise. But as soon as we turn to you, we'll unmute you, and we'd like to hear from you. So, who's got a case or a situation, past, present, future, pending, or hypothetical, that you'd like to ask us something about and to bring along today to our resolution roundtable? Who'd like to go first? Yeah, mate. What we got? I'm waiting to see a hand. A few people on here, about 20 people on. Okay, who's brought something along today that they want to talk about? All right. Okay, well, that was a quick one then. 12:05. So
I'll jump in if you want, Mike. I'm still
I
trying
was
to
just about to quit and go and eat my sandwich.
I'm still trying to formulate what I want to ask because I've kind of hopped on last minute, but so bear with me. So I had a case recently and it was two business owners, founder and a co-founder, if you like, kind of 60-40 shares in a company, and it was interpersonal issues. However, one of the parties disclosed in the joint meeting that they wished to exit the company, and the other person wasn't aware of this. So it was kind of quite significant new news to them, if you like. So there was a discussion around an exit strategy that needed to be had. So there was some conversation of whether it needed to be legal advice or interpersonal mediation. The person who it was news to quite quickly after the uninterrupted time asked for a break because they needed to process the information. So obviously I had some concerns there about what was going to happen in that kind of interim. So what I did, I just kind of clarified the confidentiality element as well, and just asked that that's what they use the break for, to go and have a break, get some air, just process that information. And then I met with both of them separately before encouraging them back together to have a conversation about what was going to happen next. So I guess my question is, would anyone else have any concerns about that break, or how might you have handled it, or does that sound about right? I guess it's that. Sorry, it's just something that I could think of in the moment. I wanted to get something out there for you.
Okay, who's got any thoughts about that one? And Di's question. So a bit of what would you call it? Some bombshell news, but particularly that somebody is exiting the organisation, and it's unbeknownst to the other party. So Di is having a break, speaking separately to the two parties and thinking about how to manage it when you're getting the two people back together. Is that right, Di?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. What would others people's thinking be about around that one?
I think for me, Chris, the key bit is just to remember that the whole process, whilst we have a stepped process, is always flexible, and you have to flex it to meet the requirements of the people in the mediation, or even your own requirements. Even if you needed to step out and go, how am I going to handle this? I think just remember that you can be flexible, and that's the strength of the whole process in interpersonal mediation. You can just pause it and do what you did. Take a break, let somebody go off and evaluate quite a large piece of information, and then sort of come back and start again. There's no sort of press on itis, I suppose. So I think that was a good thing to do, is pause it and let everyone reflect. So that's how I would have done it as well.
That's nice. Yeah. Any other thoughts about that one, about Di's one?
I think what I'd just throw in there is that the other party did have some concerns maybe about the confidentiality element and whether that person was going to go and give somebody a call. So that's kind of where my mind was going with it as well. But all I could do really was clarify the confidentiality agreement.
Okay. So you were concerned that the person making the disclosure was going to go and make a call, or the other person?
The other person, the one who found out the news and then quite quickly said, I need to take a break here.
Yeah.
And then when they came back, when I spoke to them, they did start talking about needing legal advice and were a little bit panicky. So we had a good conversation in a side meeting, and then they recognised the merit of getting back together to have a conversation about kind of next steps rather than just leaving it and going off.
Yeah.
As it went well, and it was a really good conversation. But when I spoke to the other party, they did have concerns about whether that confidence had been breached because they weren't ready to disclose. It was kind of an intention to leave the company at this stage. Nothing was formally in writing or anything like that. So they had some concerns about how and when they would do that to other people kind of invested in the company.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Nicely presented as well. So I think for me, we always come back to basics with mediation cases. So what are we trying to achieve? What are we here to do? And generally speaking, in the way we work, it's to repair or preserve a relationship, or prevent the worsening of a relationship, or prevent the development of a dispute. So I always keep that in mind. And I think about, at the start of a lot of mediation cases I've done, A, what's the objective? B, what's possible? What is it possible to achieve here? And I guess in this case, Di, where would you say it ended up? Because for me, what's possible with this situation would be that the two individuals are still talking and are still collaborating. So where would you say the case ended up, the situation ended up?
Well, like I said, they had a good conversation about and agreed kind of a time frame, and it was short-term actions that they could take, and both recognised they needed to get some further input from a legal perspective. But it was positive in terms of where they ended up, and they got to an agreement about what was needed and how that would best meet their needs for the short term, if you like.
Good. Sounds like a good outcome. How did you feel after it when you'd got them to that place?
Good, because there was a bit of encouragement that was needed in the side meetings, and I was thinking, oh, is this going to cause more damage to have this disclosed? I think there was some hurt from one side that the other person had used the mediation process to disclose that in maybe a safer space.
Yeah.
So initially it was just allowing those emotions to come out. So I think the pause was helpful for them to go and do whatever they needed to do, and then come back and have the conversation with me. And then they had a bit of time while I spoke to the other person just to digest as well. So there was a few layers to it.
Yeah.
It was positive. It was a good outcome for what it was.
A good outcome for what it was. You say it sounds like a great outcome. I mean, obviously the individuals chosen mediation to make this disclosure. They could have done it any time at all. They could have texted the other individual that morning if they wanted and told them, but they've chosen to do it within, as you put it, the safe space. And for me, I think a realistic objective would be to have them still talking at the end of it. But you've gone way further than that, way further. So they've got an agreement about how they're going to manage that situation in practical terms. And by the sound of it, they're still in quite a collaborative sort of relationship, rather than it, driving a wedge between them. So that sounds like a really good outcome. It reminds me of the fact that parties are not going to disclose what they hear in mediation is very much based on good faith. And we do ask people to enter into our written confidentiality agreement and say, you're not going to disclose things outside. I say to people, don't gossip about what you hear in the mediation. Just don't gossip about it. Don't go out there and tell people about it, about what you've heard. It might be quite sensitive. It might be things that the other party wants you to keep private. And as we know, as mediators, we hear more about the dispute than has probably been heard before. There's always more to a dispute than meets the eye. But there's a line really in terms of just trusting people are going to do this on the basis of good faith. And then when people cross the line and clearly are, really not respecting that. And one that springs to mind with me was a couple of individuals where one of the individuals initially turned up with their trades union rep at the mediation. It had been made very, very clear that people were to attend on their own and speak for themselves, but up somebody pops with their union rep. So we had to have a big discussion about that, which I solved it by calling the referrer down. The referrer was on site, and they actually came down, and we had to politely ask the union rep and explain to them what the situation was and that they shouldn't actually be there. Fine. And then we proceeded with the individual meetings. And then when we started with the joint session, it was fairly high conflict. We took a break. And it was a warm day and the windows were open. And during the break, I could quite clearly hear one of the parties outside the window on their phone to someone, relaying chapter and verse of what they've just heard in the joint meeting from the other party, and also discussing the merits of it. So I had to speak to him or her and say, right, we're done, we're over. They wanted to argue about it, but I said, no, that's not okay. Just to agree, you're going to keep it private, and straight away get on the phone to whoever it was. She wanted to argue that who it was significant, and it didn't matter that she was telling this individual everything, but actually it did. So I think we've got to trust people, but keep the objective in mind. And by the sound of it, it's a great outcome, Di, from doing the individual meeting in that way, and getting to quite a good place, with it, where the objective is more than achieved by the sound of it.
I think it possibly helped that there was a time frame on how long they had to stick to these agreements, if you like, rather than if the second party was staying in the company, if that makes sense. Possibly there was an end to it, but I don't know. But it was an interesting one. I definitely took some learning away from it.
Good. Excellent. Thanks very, very much for that. So let's hear from somebody else. A dilemma, a case, past, present, and future. Something you're having to work with at the moment, or you've had to do in the past. I'm scanning for a hand. Something you want to bring along here today to discuss in our resolution roundtable. It's very much based on what you guys bring along. So I'm not going to. I get sick of the sound of my own voice. I'm not going to talk at you too much today. So very much about anybody who would like to chip something in today, ask a question, relate an anecdote, talk about a case you've worked on, all the kinds of things you expect. Are you mostly working in workplace mediation? Just put your actual hand up if you're doing workplace mediation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What do the others do that don't do workplace mediation? Those of you who don't popped your hand up there. Let's hear from one of you. And kind of stuff you work with. Right. Okay. What kind of things are you doing on Bogoli? What kind of things are you working with?
I am involved in political mediation.
Are you? Okay. With your map of the world behind you on Bogoli.
Let me share that I recently participated in a political dispute. One is the ruling party and one is a major opposition party. And the dispute was major. There was a joint mediation, 2 other mediators. And you could see that at any given stage where there was actually a stalemate, there will be someone behind the curtains, so to speak. And the representatives would run from time to time to consult and come back and reverse the clock, so to say also. And at some stage, it was very difficult to move forward. However, at some stage, that stalemate was broken and we could move forward. Now, my question is, how easy is it to identify whether or not these people don't have the absolute mandate of the people behind the curtains? And how do you break such a situation where the people sitting before you don't have the mandate of the people behind the curtains to move forward?
Wow, what
Yes.
a great question. Thank you very, very much for that. So it's kind of rather a different scenario than we're talking about with workplace. Well, just a couple of questions about the case first, Mughali, bearing in mind we try to preserve the confidentiality of that situation. But was the intended outcome that there should be some kind of an exchange of value, some money or contractual agreement or goods or services to be provided or replaced? Was there some exchange of value involved in that dispute?
The main objective was to achieve some consensus in terms of governance.
Okay.
Yes, that is actually the underlying issue.
Okay.
And if that one was acceptable, then the dispute would be almost 100% solved.
Okay, excellent. The reason I ask is that we're very careful in mediation that if people are signing an agreement at the end or making an agreement at the end that could potentially be legally binding upon them, which it probably would be in your case, that they get some legal advice. So while in interpersonal mediation, so between neighbours or between work colleagues, it's about behaviours. It's about how we conduct ourselves. But in the kind of thing you're talking about, where there is to be effectively an exchange of value. So around governance, this could affect people's ownership. It could affect their legal responsibilities. It could affect a certain liability or risk that they are exposed to. In those cases, I would strongly suggest they have some legal advice, because they might otherwise end up in a position of causing the other party jeopardy, or selling themselves short in terms of their own legal rights and entitlements. So I want to make sure they would have their legal advice. So in that case, they do need to have legal advisors either behind or in front of the curtain. But we need to know that the people who are actually doing the negotiation absolutely have to have the authority to settle. Absolutely, they must have the authority to settle. Otherwise, it's just a talking shop and we don't achieve anything. So if they are just sent as foot soldiers to relay the messages of their generals, and they have this chat and then go back to their generals and then say, oh, my general says this, oh, well, my general says that, and he or she is just moving forwards and backwards, we don't actually get anywhere. So we need to have at the table the people with the authority to settle. What I prefer is to have a roundtable with, metaphorically, with everybody there. So more than the whispering in corners or disappearing behind the curtains, as you say, again, metaphorically, to get the advice. If we can have everybody present, it's far more productive. But if there are things that are sensitive that people want to hold their cards close to their chest so they don't disclose everything all at once, then okay. But they still must have the authority. Otherwise, all we're doing is having a chat, which doesn't lead anywhere. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anybody have any thoughts about that, about Umagoli's case there? More of a political case than an interpersonal fallout at work or between neighbours. Any thoughts there? Okay. Right. Deborah, you had your hand up. Have you still something you'd like to chuck in there?
No, sorry, I was just coming back to your question around what type of mediation. So I'm a newly qualified mediator in civil and commercial, and I'm doing workplace conversion next week. And also signed up to do a bit of community and neighbourhood. So
okay,
not too much to add because I've only done one observation so far.
Okay, cool. Anybody think about any thoughts about all those different sorts of mediation there? Are other people involved in several types of mediation? Are there those of you who sort of have your model and try and apply it in as many places as you can? I'm often curious about that one. Who's doing sort of more than sort of your workplace mediation? Workplace tends to be a large market because there's always an employer who will pay for it. I think that's fair to say. But in terms of the model, Angela, is something there. So Angela, it's okay. Scott will unmute you for Angela. I don't think I can do it. There we go. You're unmuted. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So the type of mediation that I do family group conferencing. So I work with organizing families to come together to kind of showcase their support. Oftentimes the families are at loggerheads with each other. It would be maybe the parents predominantly. So one of the things I do in those cases is organize a mediation if they are willing to commit to the process. And it can be really, really helpful in bringing them together and hence having a really positive outcome at the family group conference. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Angela. When we started training family group conference facilitators, all right from when we started 24, 25 years ago, and we had a bit of a debate with some of the organizations we worked with and said, is this mediation, doing family group conferencing? Well, let me put it straight back to you, Angela. Do you think it's mediation that you do? I think the actual family group conference itself is not really mediation, even though you're actually maybe trying to facilitate a kind of a safe space for everyone to be comfortable to have that discussion. The mediation that I would do would be before I do a family group conference. So if you have two parents that are in conflict and they're willing to have that mediation so that they would be in a position to come together in the same meeting space, then that works very well. But then there are many times where it doesn't work because you'll have one party that's very stubborn and they're not having a bar of it. They're not going to do it.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Our debate about whether or not family group conferences mediation, it'll probably continue. So that's absolutely on the nail what you've said there. I would absolutely agree with that. So where you have parents or family members who are at loggerheads, but just for the benefit of other people who are not clear with this, what it is, often it's arrangements for a young person or child who is what shall we say, is the bouncing ball in between the parents, and who's the arrangements for whom are not quite settled in the event of some kind of a disruption within the family, particularly around separation of the parents or carers or guardians. And the conference, the idea is to bring in the wider family members. So aunts and uncles, brother, sister, cousin, granny, grandma and granddad, to say, what can we do to put our heads together as a wider family in order to ensure that the young person or child is safe and cared for, and that their welfare is given primacy. Is that okay as a roundup of what we do, Angela?
Yeah, that's perfect. The family get the opportunity to come up with a plan. So for the way forward then. So oftentimes it's around contact. And other times it's just around the family, the parent or parents being supported in terms like practical support, emotional support, and being able to encourage them if they're having issues around drug and alcohol or whatever. They might be attending therapeutic groups, and the family supporting that through encouragement and motivation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Angela. Very eloquent roundup of what happens in FGC. So for me, the practitioner is impartial. Largely, people are coming into it voluntarily, although there can be consequences if they don't volunteer for it. Something else has to happen, because in UK law, the children's rights are given primacy, and children's safety is given primacy. And the confidentiality is in a sense preserved, because you would, if you were seeing the parents or guardians or carers prior to the group conference, you would keep private things that they might say to you. So one of them has a new partner, or one of them is leaving town, or something might be going on that you would promise to keep private. So I think largely the practitioner is impartial. What we're doing is largely voluntary, and it's largely confidential. So we're pretty close to ticking the 3 essential boxes for mediation, in my view. The skills are identical.
Yes.
In terms of our active listening, our building collaboration, our reframing, our looking for options, our managing the conversation to minimize disruptions, etc., etc. And then there's that bit in family group conferencing where we give them some private family time. So the practitioner actually leaves the room.
Yes.
And we let them, having got to a decent place with their conversation, we let them get on with it and to come up with their family plan. And then the practitioner would then help them to put that into a form which is workable and specific and measurable, etc., etc., so that they can leave with that. And provided we have the buy-in of all of the essential family members, it's a very, in my experience, a very successful process. And what I like about it is it very much empowers families to make their own decisions if they are prepared and have the capacity to do so. When otherwise they might be told what they have to do. But it's the kids' rights that always get primacy, quite right too. But it's another area in which we can apply the skills of interpersonal mediation. Okay, and it's great work. It's great work. I've been in a few. In the early days, we did some restorative justice work as well, and some of the ways you set up the groups, there are some similarities, a lot of differences as well, but some similarities. It reminds me of doing some of that work too. Okay, anybody who'd like to chip in now with something you're doing, something you're working on? It doesn't have to be epic and world-changing. Anything you'd like to chip in? Let's hear from now. I can see your handle is Banner T. I beg your pardon, I don't know your name, but okay. So Banner T 001. Hi.
Hi, my name's Tom. I had a slightly interesting case, and I thought it might be interesting because it crosses professional workplace and social media, and often those blurred boundaries. I was asked to sub in for an interview at very short notice, and I wasn't told why, but the interview panel person had removed herself for some unknown secret reason. We interviewed and we appointed based on scoring, as you should in an interview, and only afterwards I was informed that one of the interviewees had shared social media images of the person who removed herself from the interview panel, and had questioned their appropriateness for a registered professional, a senior member of staff within the organization, whether that her personal decisions that she makes on social media, things she chooses to send, were appropriate. She hadn't said that to one or two people, she'd said it to about 6 or 7 people within a small workplace team. So I was able to step back and know that we appointed based purely on score, but the other person in the interview panel was aware of what had gone on prior. But it was reassuring in the sense that the person who got the job scored considerably higher than all the other candidates. So you felt it was impartial, you felt it was fair. And I'd obviously done some introduction to mediation and I was new to it. And I went on to see how it was just brushed under the carpet, that because it was around social media and what someone did on their personal smartphone, it was never dealt with. But I know now that that member of staff, they obviously know that they've fallen out, but nobody's addressing it, and it's all going under the radar. And I wonder whether it was a missed opportunity, and how you, if you do undertake mediation in the workplace, how you can bring it back to your contract of employment and your obligations at the workplace, and how you can't police what people do and their opinions outside of work. So I thought it was quite an interesting case.
Absolutely. So is the door still open to maybe mending the relationship between these individuals, or is that?
I think it's a possibility. I think if their relationship breakdown inhibited the workplace, then that would be the tipping point. They remain their direct superior, but they don't work closely on a daily basis. But if circumstances came to that they had to work closely and professionally with each other, I would question whether they'd be able to.
Yeah, sure. So your criteria there, Tom, would be if it started to impact on what happens in the workplace, then it would be perhaps appropriate to think about mediation. But unless and until that happens, there's no particular need to roll any mediation out.
Yeah, that is it in a nutshell. But I think we all know that the organisations talk, that people whisper, reputations are tarnished, and particularly perhaps with a junior member of staff who's looking for promotion, that can be very damaging. So perhaps there's an opportunity to nip it in the bud early.
Yeah. Oh, okay, sure. Well, thanks very much for that, Tom. Very interesting situation there. So throwing that out a bit wider, how well do we need people to get on in the workplace? If two people don't particularly gel, if there's some history, if one has done something like post about the other on social media, in a hurtful or attacking or otherwise persecutory way, but we think, okay, that's all right because they don't have too much direct contact. It's not yet impacting the workplace. This person's not yet going for a promotion board, so it's all right. Don't rock the boat. Leave it until it matters. I'm sorry if that's a little bit caricaturing of that difficult situation, Tom. But how far generally can we let people dislike each other or not get on or have history that's not being addressed? When do we have to attend to that relationship? Any thoughts from anybody here today? Marcia, let's get you unmuted. There we go, Marcia.
Yeah, in my opinion, it really depends on if it's having an impact on the work that they're doing. For me, when I talk to, my team and two of the team members, it's about, if it's not, we're not come to work to like each other. it's a bonus if we do, and we should like each other. But unfortunately, you know, there's lots of different characters and personalities. If it doesn't have an impact on the work that people are doing, and other people aren't being impacted as a result of people not liking each other, my personal viewpoint is, then what can you do? You know, when it starts having an impact on the outcomes, you know, on on professional relationships, then that's when we need to start to have conversations, and mediation is a good way of bringing those people together to have a fruitful working relationship. But it doesn't, you know, after work, then that's up to them. Does that make sense? It's about being able to follow the you know, the terms and conditions of employment, you know, whatever is the standards of the organization, whatever the culture is, as long as they're not you know, being disrespectful of each other, and they are delivering what they're supposed to be doing in their workplace, then what can you do? From my perspective, there's very little that you can do if they are carrying out their role and responsibility within their workplace, and they're not having an impact on relationships. That's what I would say.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcia. Great roundup. Thank you very much for that. Annabelle, you got some thoughts on this as well. So over to Annabelle. Just get you unmuted as well, Annabelle. Okay.
Yes, so I 100% agree with Marcia. It's the impact that it has on the work of the individuals involved, and also on the wider team. I do workplace mediation, and we had a situation where line manager and member of staff had got to a point where communication had broken down completely, and it was therefore kind of halting the progression of flow of work and flow of progress, if you like. So it became critical really to try and repair that relationship, or at least, as Marcy said, you know, we're not asking people to go off skipping down the corridor together, but as long as it's a amenable working relationship and it's a functionable relationship, I think that's critical in any organisation, that people can at least work together and progress and agree to disagree perhaps and move on from that.
Sure. Okay. So the consensus would seem to be, maybe somebody disagrees, but is that provided the conduct is respectful, provided they're doing the job that they're paid to do, provided it's not impacting on other team members' working relationships, then okay, we don't have to like everybody that we work with. We don't have to necessarily get on with everybody else that we work with, and certainly trying to foster relationships that would then mean people see each other outside or walk down to the bus stop together. We don't need that so long as people are getting on with the work. So back to you, Marcia.
Sorry, it's on another point now, if you don't mind. So just I had something I wanted to ask. So I've had several referrals. I'm a work-based mediator. And unfortunately, the other party didn't want to engage in the mediation. And so quite frequently, I get the person who wanted to partake in the mediation wanting the conversation, and I feel really awful. And often I do talk to them about, okay, I send them the sort of what is a mediation before, and what's the purpose of mediation before I actually meet them. But they often reach out to say, I'm really disappointed that I couldn't engage in this. And I'm just wondering if anybody else has had that experience. It comes up quite frequently for me, in the sense of one party wants to engage, the other party doesn't. And so obviously I explain it. It's got to be both of you agreeing to do this. We can't move forward if both of you don't want to move forward with it. But I do feel that the other person who wanted to do something is left hanging. And what I have been doing is sort of having a conversation with them about, unfortunately, we can't proceed. At any point, if the referrer comes back in and that person does want to engage, then we can move forward. But I just feel really that person really wants to sort something out, and I just feel that they're just left then to go back into that situation without trying to repair the relationship.
It's really unfortunate. This is for some people, this is where conflict coaching comes in. It's about talking. I imagine that conversation that you described, Marcia, it's probably down that road, you know, of okay, they're not going to mediate, but here's how you might be able to deal better with the situation you find yourself in. And we have to be really careful to withhold judgment around that, because we're only hearing one side of the story. But you know, how generally to deal with somebody who's hostile towards you, or with whom there is a poor relationship. This Mo 4019 has got their hand up the top corner there. Sorry, I don't have your name. I presume it begins with Mo or something. It'd be great to see you if you want to put your camera on, and we're not going to insist, but if you want to put your camera
on. My bandwidth is quite tricky, so if I put the camera on, I'll probably be cut out. I just want I have a sort of slightly discerning view on the earlier suggestions in terms of people not, don't have to like each other and would be able to work in a team. I think it's one of the situations that's really extremely difficult to handle. And very often, if two people, one of them doesn't like the other and work in a team, can manifest into so many ways and create a very toxic environment. Because very often what you find is that there will be shifts within the team, some people taking sides with the other, and some, and the thing is, human nature as we have it, if somebody doesn't like someone and the issue is not addressed, for them to have a better understanding. And I would refer to one of the things that we learn in mediation courses, the orange grind and the orange juice. If the two people that are meant to have these commodities do not understand one another, as in terms of one wanting the grind and the other wanting the juice, and therefore they could work together, it would always create a conflict. And that's what we often find. And I've been involved in sort of resolving issues with bullying and racism. And very often when the issue is not addressed, for people to understand the other and the other person actually succumbing and admitting to their behaviors so that they can work together, it's very difficult to create a harmonious environment for them to work beautifully. Sometimes the ultimate resolution is somebody will have to move, and that's the only thing that will work. But to work in a small team and not liking the person, but just get on with them and work, can be really, really difficult.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. So I think you're empathizing with what's been sort of suggested already, which is the difficulty that this can bring to a team where somebody's not prepared to walk towards the mediation table, and the other party's left with this sort of, I really wanted to sort this out, but I'm not being allowed
Absolutely.
to. And Absolutely. Then how that can affect people around. You bet. So, you notice it it leaks out. So we get this leakage, especially in people's non-verbal communication. So
precisely.
And it becomes quite conspicuous to other team members. It can be a case for a kind of a team facilitation. It can be
absolutely,
which is a topic all of its own, of course. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that contribution, and for all of the contributions today. They were still quite short, these things. I do urge you, if you don't already have, to set up your own arrangements for case supervision, by the way, somewhere that you can take cases along it. And if you're working in an organization where there's more than one mediator, for you guys to get together and to to support each other as well in a sort of a peer mediation type of way. Chris, you got your hand up. Let's hear from Chris.
Yeah, just something really. A tool that I've started to use relatively recently is doing disc profiling for those that are coming to my mediations. It's part of the sort of package that I produce out, and that really helps. It helps me as a mediator sometimes understand the participants, where they're coming from, what their sort of character profiling sort of says how they deal with conflict. But it's also a really good tool for organizations to look and see the makeup of the people within the teams. For instance, I did a team mediation a while ago where I was provided with the DISC profiles, and it was quite clear that there were way too many of one type of profile in the team. So like too many reds and not enough blues, and that in itself was causing conflict. But often, the more recent couple of mediations I've done where I've delivered the profiling myself, you can get an almost an automatic a red and a blue are inherently sort of designed to butt heads just on the way they think and the way they go about tasks. And I found that beginning to be quite a useful tool in helping set the scene and for people to understand that the other person isn't being nasty. It's just they're different and that they approach things differently based on their sort of personality profile. So just put it out there. I found it quite a useful tool, the mediations.
Okay. So thank you for that, Chris. Yeah, DISC is something that I've heard rather more about this in recent years. It's one of the psychometric tests. It's looking at a sort of a profiling, personality profiling thing. D for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, is something like conscientiousness.
So like compliance.
Compliance, okay. So it's sort of putting labels on sort of personality types and interactional styles. Yeah, Google DISC, you'll find probably more than you need on DISC. Okay, right. It's 12:47. We're trying to keep these for about 45 minutes. Thank you very much for popping along today. I was about to say, it's reassuring for me to know that people have their own sort of arrangements for case supervision. I like to think, probably a lot of you know, I come from a psychotherapy background where case supervision is absolutely mandated, where you have to have case supervision. And when I came into this field 25 odd years ago, I was surprised how little emphasis is put on case supervision. It's a really important place for you to be able to offload about cases, to sort of have a sounding board to talk through cases, to think about any critical incidents, and especially think about learning points that may arise from casework that you're doing. So if you don't already have an arrangement for that, I'd have a think about that for yourselves. Otherwise, you're welcome to come along to these resolution roundtables. I love to hear people's war stories and dilemmas and successes and not quite so successes, and things that we share as mediators, irrespective of the kind of work we're doing. So we've got a lovely variety here today, and we're going to be talking about the political mediation there. Angela mentioned about family group conferencing. Chris talking about profiling as an aspect of working as a mediator, and other contributions as well. Diane and Annabelle in relation to workplace cases. So, and the kind of things that can come up, the sorts of dilemmas that we have to face. Okay, so fantastic. And Marcia and everybody. So 12:48, I'm going to stop for now. If you're able to, it'd be good to have you along to the next one that we do of these. I think we'll do them as a regular thing now that we seem to have sort of learned that they are popular. We do get quite a lot of sign-ups on these. Very much an interactive event, as I've encouraged you all to chip in today and put your cameras on if you can. So next interactive resolution roundtable, hope to see some of your faces again, and I hope this has been helpful to you. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you again. Okay, cheers.